Hello. This is about the levels of consciousness and how it applies to the target individual program and what they're hoping to achieve, and how it is an energy war. And the map of consciousness, which I'm using here to refer to what is actually being done, is by Dr. David Hawkins. And he calls it the map of the scale of consciousness. And it's a logarithmic map. And you have a dividing line here. Above you have the levels of truth, which are beneficial to the person. The person has higher levels of energy, which is just happiness, really. High energy is just happiness, as said by Dr. David Hawkins. And the higher the level of energy, generally the higher level of happiness of the person. Also, the higher the level of consciousness of person, which is the same thing I'm referring to, actually, the more ability they have to impact the world in positive ways and to direct their own future in positive ways, karma permitting. And below that you have the levels of falsehood. And these are logarithmic levels, 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. So these are the higher levels. The dividing line is the level of courage, because that is when you can change things in your life, when you've got the energy and the power and the personal power to change things. And you do that by affirmation, because you're empowered. That's the process of it. And, you think you're feasible, life's feasible, you've got courage, you're not afraid. And that's the beginning of the levels of personal power, and also the levels of influencing the world in a positive way, and also counterbalancing the general negativity of the world. Just a few people at the very top of this, see, it's logarithmic consciousness level. Just a few people at the top counterbalance, according to Dr. David Hawkins, the whole of the lower negativity in the world, and prevent the world from self-destructing. I'm referring to this map and target individuals and the target individual program because it's significant in that it is an energy war. The war is on our energy levels, and there is, if you can take somebody, say you have a TI, and for instance they're at the very high energy level of truth. These are general. They're not. You're not stuck at this all the time. They have, like a certain octave of it. You have a certain range. But generally, it can be done to a mean. So people around the level of, say, willingness. You have the emotion of optimism. The process is intention. Yeah. And they're willing, they're hopeful, and they're inspiring. You have somebody at that very positive level, and the perps try their best to drive that person down to the level of apathy and hatred. And the emotion of apathy and hatred is despair. The process is abdication. So that they feel hopeless and condemning. So you have the once hopeful person now feeling hopeless. They was once inspiring and inspired, now they condemn. They was optimistic, but now they're in despair. So that is the perp's intention, isn't it? With all the tactics that are used to do that. So what is very interesting is you have somebody, we'll go back up to that hypothetical personality, at 310, the logarithmic energy level. Hypothetically, in this instance, if the perps have driven that person down to the energy level of 50, so that they're feeling these things, in that instance, what they have done, there's been an energy exchange. So you have the 310, now it's down to 50. What's the difference between 310 and 50? 260. Where's that energy gone? It's gone to the perps. That is why this is an energy war. Also, by driving somebody's energy lower down, they tend to become less effective, obviously. They've got less personal power in the world. These energy levels are not very efficient because they're obsessed with propagating anxiety, withdrawal. That's one of the things they try and do. They tend to go around in circles. So somebody really desires something, then they get angry because they can't have it, then they might fall to being afraid. So they sort of go around upon themselves, which again is a lower energy state, which also impacts society, because as Dr. David Hawkins said, the higher levels here, just the percentage of people at the higher levels, such as reason, love's a very high level, that's 500, such as reason, which doesn't have emotion in it. Reason is understanding, abstraction, and it's a wise view. You know, it's meaningful. They feel life's meaningful, but they've got reason, and it's unemotional. So there's a kind of a separation between events and looking at them, which doesn't really impact the world negatively, it impacts the world positively. And above that you have love and acceptance, willingness, not that we should accept our situation, but if you can find something in your day to accept and feel harmonious about, because when you accept things, you do feel harmonious. And you feel that God is merciful, and you transcend things through forgiveness. But I don't think that accepting our situation is going to help too much, because this is an energy war. If we can stay at 350 and we can feel these things and not throw up any of these, call up any of this anger or desire to change things or fear or grief or pride, if we can do that, then, you know, great. But the higher levels are very effective. And that's basically what is attempting to be done. But by taking people from these levels here and removing them to these levels here does impact society. If there isn't a certain amount of people radiating these higher energy levels, then society will self-destruct through the lower energy levels. If you've got everybody feeling all these things, it's just gonna go further down, which is where the perps do try to get you feeling guilt, apathy, hatred, despair, humiliation, etc. So what can we do? There was a book by Victor, it was called Man's Search for Meaning, and it said in the book, very important, that man can choose his reaction. He can choose the way he thinks and feels about any given situation, even if he can't choose his circumstances. Taking that in mind, these circumstances that are being thrown and being perpetrated on targeted individuals seek to drive by emotion and by playing on the thoughts of unfairness. They tend to make people feel vengeful and aggressive, and energy is going out when somebody feels anger, not that anger is wrong. And if they can keep that going, they can lower the energy of the person. And this is what these gang stalkers, this is what the tactics by the surveillance, loss of privacy, everything else seeks to do to lower our energy. Now, going back to the book, Man's Search for Meaning, and the basis of that was that book was that man, no matter how terrible his circumstances, he can choose how he feels and how he thinks about a situation. So rather than just react and feel these things we could dedicate ourselves to feeling one of these, even if only for a few minutes, and then put our attention on these higher levels and what creates these higher levels. Obviously, we will be impeded. The perps are deliberately designed their program to prevent us from accessing anything that's going to help us access these higher levels, such as they burn me when I go out, if I meditate outside, yeah? Or if I do something which makes me feel really good, like singing, or if I want a cat, I adore cats, then they let me know that they're going to wait till I get another one and then they're going to kill it again. Obviously, that would really upset me because I'm an animal lover. And also, having a pet does raise your energy. It does make, you do feel better with a pet. They don't want that. They want, not just myself, but presumably everyone else in the program to feel these things, grief and guilt and, regret and anxiety and all that stuff. And because we know that, we know it's an energy war, and that these are the things they're trying to keep us away from. Going back to the book again, Man's Search for Meaning. This is an energy war, and if we fall down here due to their machinations and stay down here, we've lost the war. If we can vault to the levels that they're trying to keep us away from and say, no, I'm not going to do that. I know what your game is. I'm not going to do fear. I'm not going to do maybe anger is good because anger can help you to change your situation, you see? I'm angry. That's why I'm doing this video, which is helping me to put things in a new perspective and get a new strategy. So, say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to feel you are doing these things to get me to get my energy so low that I will have no self-power. I'll have no personal power. And because all these levels are below the level of effectiveness and personal power, they're destructive. All the higher levels are creative and constructive, and they're beneficial. These are the levels of life, levels of truth. All these levels are life-giving. And all these levels are closer to death. The lower down you go, the least energy you have, you're closer to death. What's below? Feeling shame and humiliation. Very low energy level, 20. Hateful, despising. The process of that is elimination. Below that you have death, because there isn't enough energy within the person to continue survival, to change their circumstances. This is an internal way of looking at things within yourself. There are external things to do also. It isn't the answer to everything. But if one individual can feel any of these things or dedicate themselves, even just looking at something or experience something, anything that takes your energy to one of these higher levels, in those moments that you've done that, you have defeated the perps, because there has been no energy exchange. In fact, the perps have lost energy because they failed. The whole strategy of the perps is to lower your energy. So every minute you can keep your energy high. Every minute you can ignore them and do whatever that takes. By all means, film them, record them, write down what's going on, and then forget about it. And dedicate yourself to one of the higher things, the higher energy levels, and the positivity. And they will try so hard to get you to stop anything that is beneficial for you. Because, not just because that gives you more personal power and makes you more effective in the world. Remember, these numbers are logarithmic, and they're incredibly powerful compared to these. These levels have no power whatsoever. And that's what they want. They want you powerless. So every minute you can turn to one of these, you are defeating the perps and ad infinitum. But it is important to clear any negative energies, to look at them and clear them. And I'll do another talk about that because it's very, very important, because you can't just utilize this if you have negativity. Even if it's residual, even if it's just a tiny little bit nibbling away in your solar plexus, you do have to process it, because it can come back and it's not very good for you. You're not going to get to the clean high levels unless you address these. And that doesn't mean therapy, that doesn't mean analysing them. Sometimes that can make them bigger, seem bigger than they are, when really these things are generally, if you cut the thought out, you cut the thinking out, they're just unpleasant sensations. But they need to be addressed nonetheless. Thank you. This talk has been inspired by the works of Dr. David Hawkins. I've used the theses of Dr. David Hawkins from his books, and I've applied those things to how the gang stalkers, rather than the world, this is generally the world, and karma and personal consciousness, but I've used those to show how they apply to this program. Some people say that the people behind these programs are archons, are psychopaths, are the government, are Satanists. From my own personal experience, when I'd been burned, and the person that did this was very, very heavy-handed, the joy after they'd done it, and the way they drove off waving at me, they just looked so happy. They was reveling in it, in causing pain and misery. You know, and that day, it was a nice sunny day, I was feeling okay. It was probably somewhere around here, you know. And, you know, they got, I wouldn't say, fear, because, you know, you think they could do it any time, you know. So then, that is their intention, isn't it? So this is just one strategy in dealing with this whole program. But if they can't get your energy down here, no matter what they do, if they can't get your energy down here, then there's been no energy exchange and they've failed. Okay, thank you. God bless.